Hey, so this is a story about something that happened to me a couple of years ago, and honestly, thinking about it still gives me chills. But what makes it even weirder is how everything played out. Like, I'm convinced karma is real after this. So I had this neighbor, right? We'll call him Dan. Dan was just off. You know those people who just give you a bad vibe for no reason? That was Dan. He lived in the house across the street from mine, and from the moment he moved in, something about him always made me uncomfortable. He'd do weird things, like stand at his window late at night staring into the street. But here's the thing. His lights were always off. You could just make out his silhouette in the window, and I'd catch him staring at my house for hours. Like, no joke, it felt like every time I looked out, there he was. It got to the point where I started keeping my blinds shut. The last thing I needed was to feel his creepy eyes on me. But that was just the beginning. One night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to this tapping noise. At first, I thought it was just branches against the window, but when I got up to check, there was nothing there. I brushed it off, thinking I was just hearing things, you know? But the next night, it happened again, except this time the sound was coming from the back door. I remember my heart racing as I grabbed a flashlight and crept down the stairs. I peeked through the window, expecting to see maybe an animal or something, but nothing. My backyard was empty. That's when I noticed something strange. The gate to my backyard, it was open. Now, I know for a fact I locked it. I always lock it, especially since Dan moved in. But there it was, wide open like someone had just walked through. I started feeling paranoid, like maybe I was overreacting, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. So, I did what any reasonable person would do. I installed a camera at the back of my house. You know, just to see if I could catch anything. Fast forward a few nights. The tapping continued, but I ignored it. I knew I'd get my answers soon enough, and boy did I. When I checked the footage the next morning, my stomach dropped. There, clear as day, was Dan, standing outside my back door tapping on the glass. His face was this blank, emotionless mask. He wasn't trying to break in or anything. He was just standing there, watching. I don't know how long he had been doing it before I caught him on camera. But the thought of him being that close to me, to my house, made my skin crawl. I called the cops immediately, and they came over to talk to him. But all he got was a warning. They told me there wasn't much they could do since, technically, he hadn't done anything illegal, but they promised to keep an eye on him. Great, right? Like that was supposed to make me feel safe. A few days passed, and I tried to go back to normal, but then things escalated. One night, I woke up to the sound of my back door rattling, like someone was trying to force it open. I freaked out, grabbed my phone, and called the cops. I was terrified that this time, Dan was trying to break in for real. The police arrived, and when they searched my backyard, they found footprints leading up to my door, and Dan's back window was wide open. They knocked on his door, but he didn't answer. Eventually, they forced their way in, and what they found was horrifying. Dan's house was a disaster. There were piles of trash everywhere, old food rotting on the counters, and this overwhelming smell of decay. But that wasn't the worst part. In his living room, the police found a collection of pictures. Pictures of me, taken from outside my house. Some were from weeks ago, others from the very night they came. But here's the thing, Dan was gone. He just vanished. No one had seen him leave the house, and there was no sign of him. It was like he had disappeared into thin air. The police searched for weeks but never found him. Now here's where the karma kicks in. A few months later, I'm watching the news, and there's this report about a body being found in the woods about 50 miles away. They identified it as Dan. The weird thing? The autopsy showed that he had died the same night the cops had come to my house. They said it looked like he had been attacked by an animal, like a bear or something. But there was one more detail that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. They found scratch marks on his body, and they looked exactly like the ones on my back door. I don't know how to explain it, but it felt like whatever was out there watching me, it got him. It was like the universe decided he needed to pay for what he'd done. I still don't know if I believe in karma, But after that night, I definitely think twice about the energy people put out into the world.